Good morning, everyone. I am honored. We are honored to be here. And I say we, the love of my life, my soulmate, my traveling buddy. I never leave home without her. She's in the back. You guys won't see her. She's always in the back, but she is the most important thing in the world. My wife, Callie, is always with me. She's back. And before I get started, I just like to, a short story about Callie. We go everywhere together, and we do, we run into a lot of situations. When we first started this, I had an agent about 2 years, and one day he called me, and he said, Nate, you'll make more money if you leave Callie at home. And I said, Doug, that's not his real name. I said, you might have some validity to that statement. I said, but she's right here. Why don't you tell her that? And he goes, no. I said, oh, when you were trying to break the team up, you were Joe Burrow's cool. But when I put the pressure on you, you flip your wig like Antonio Brown or something. So you're trying to play a player. You can't play a player. I know that little woman back there. She does not play. I want to thank Ron so much for having me. And I see why you guys are so successful. People who know how to do this, the number one thing about them? They know how to relate to people. And that's what he does. He relates to people. Mitch, Karen, and most of all, sweet Sarah in the back. Yeah, Sarah had to go through a lot to get this all set up, but she is a trooper. I love this energy. I met Robert. Robert played ball, so he was telling me, he said, what time did you get in last night? I said, we got in about 3:30 this morning. And he said, yeah, we know, athletes, I coached, he played. You don't get much sleep those 14, 18-hour days trying to get ready to play those games. So he said, you just put one foot in the other, coach. I said, yes, I just put one foot, just keep on going. It doesn't stop. But we're here, bright and early, with you. This is what we're going to do today. The title of your presentation is, What's Your Legacy? What I'll do is I'll give you a definition of living and leaving an intentional positive legacy. Then I'll share a story with you, a personal story of living and leaving an intentional positive legacy, and then I'll close this out with a challenge to you in regards to living and leaving an intentional positive legacy. Now, we didn't come all the way from Texas to Charlotte or to North Carolina to sell you a book. I can't make a living selling books, right? I'm here because God has put a message on my heart for you that I feel that will enhance your significance, your success, and your influence through the people you meet and the relationships you build. I have a short video I'd like to show you.
Preserving August Wilson's legacy, now part of your legacy?
Well, I don't know about all that. I'm just here to take care of this man's work, put the best actors and directors around it, and make the movies. By the time you have a legacy, you're usually not here anymore, right? So I don't know. I don't even think of it that way. I'm busy. I'm not sitting around looking at what I'm doing. I'm doing it.
Went from being a young artist to a middle-aged artist to a mature artist, and now I'm a is he still alive artist.
Do you have any sense of what you'd like your legacy to be?
I don't, I'm not a legacy person.
Both great men, right? Both great men. But they don't have a clue about legacies. Your legacy doesn't start when you die. And you will all leave a legacy. Your legacy started the day you were born, right? It's who you are. It's everything about you. And you will leave a legacy. We all have a legacy we're going to leave. Mr. Ziegler, he said, we are conditioned to believe much more of what we see than what we hear. He said the eyes are the windows to the soul. The eyes are the one organ that we have that's directly connected to the brain. Therefore, logically, we're going to believe much more of what we see than what we hear. But you have to understand this. We're inspired, motivated, and moved to take action on what we hear. Why is that? Because the feeling brain is 10 times larger than the thinking brain, right? So this is what Mr. Ziegler is saying. When what you do matches what you say, you're going to be very, very successful at what you do. Why is that? Because matching what you do to what you say is all about building and maintaining intentional positive relationships. And building and maintaining intentional positive relationships are about trust. And trust is about character. And character is about living and leaving an intentional positive legacy. The other reason that we're confused about a legacy is that definition by Webster. Webster defined legacy as money or material possession left over to someone by will or bequest. I've studied this paradigm for a number of years, and I've come to the conclusion that your legacy is never going to be about money or material possessions. Your legacy is going to be about two things: your ability to live and leave an intentional legacy, that's your character, and your ability to build and maintain intentional positive relationships, that's your service, right? Let's go up to character. Thomas Jefferson said, a man or a woman's work is a portrait of their life. Do you know that you paint a picture every day of who you are by the things that you say and do when you interact with other people? But the greatest portrait of your life, of who you are the things that you say and do when you don't think anybody is watching you. Right? And that's the problem with living and leaving an intentional legacy. You don't know who, you don't know where, and you don't know when someone is watching you, right? The ability to build and maintain positive relationships are all about service. Your service are those honorable things that people say and remember about you when you do what you do. And those things that you do connects them. And when you have an impression on someone, they will never forget you. When you build and maintain that relationship, those are the things that they remember about you. They will pass on to others forever. That, my brothers and sisters, is your legacy. John Maxwell said, you're going to leave a deep, long-lasting legacy when you empower people to do great things without you. Without you. Now, I changed that up a little bit. I used the word empower instead of empower. Empower, E-M-P-O-W-E-R, is defined as giving somebody the authority or the power to do something. Now, you know this as well as I do. When you give somebody the power or authority to do something and you don't like what they do, guess what? You can do what? You can take it, right? And you give it to somebody else. Empower is defined as giving somebody, helping someone, encouraging someone, inspiring someone to use their God-given innate abilities to do great things. When you inspire someone to use their God-given innate abilities to do something, nobody can take it from them, right? That's why you're here. That's why you do what you do. That's why you're successful. You empower people to do great things without you. Good business is never about the product. You got to have a good product. Good business is always about the people and the relationship you build with the people. I want to share with you a story about two men who truly wanted to empower me to do great things without them. Two men whose legacy I will emulate, I will follow until the day that I die. Two men who built and maintained a relationship with me that will last forever. I grew up in poverty. I'm the middle child of 8 siblings. Would have been 9. My youngest brother died at birth. My father, he worked at a humble full-service station on Main Street in that small West Texas community that I grew up in. Full service. You know, I'm so sorry. He washed cars, he fixed flats, he pumped gas for the majority of his life. And I'm so sorry I see so many young faces. You will never, ever know what full service is. You don't have a clue. You guys run up to those convenience stores and you think it's convenient. That is not convenient. It's convenient to them, but my dad understood full service. My mom, she worked as a domestic. She cleaned houses. She was full service too. She washed clothes, she cooked, she cleaned the majority of her life. The 10 of us, we lived in a 3-room, not bedroom house, a 3-room house that stood on cinder blocks. There was no hot water, no indoor bath facility in that home. Whenever my mom got ready for us to take a bath, she would heat the water up on the stove and pour it into a number 3 foot tub. Now, once again, some of you look pretty young out there. You don't have a clue what a number 3 foot tub is. So this is a teaching moment. If you look just above my sister's head on the side of that house, that is a number 3 foot tub. The majority of the clothes that I wore came from the homes that my mom cleaned. They were hand-me-down. I have on my Sunday best. I'm just finishing worship with my aunt. And if I blew this, it's pretty close to IMAX. But if I got it bigger, you would see holes in the knees of those jeans that I have on. And if I could digitize it and make it 3D and turn it around, you would see holes in the elbows of that shirt or iron-on patches that my mom put on. My older brother, he's 4 years older than I remember many Saturday mornings he'd wake me up and we would scour the neighborhood alleys. We would go through the trash can looking for the thickest and the best cardboard we could find so we can cut it out and I could put it in the soles of my shoes to keep the heat of the pavement out in the summer, the water out when it rained, the cold out in the winter. Because our dad didn't have the money to buy shoes on a regular basis. I remember my elementary school days vividly because they were pivotal in my life. My mom, she used to line us up and she would give us dry meat and bread, bologna sandwiches in a brown paper sack and 2 cents for a carton of milk. I remember walking to school with my sisters. I have 5 sisters, but 2 were in the elementary meeting. One 2 years older, she was in the 6th grade. One 2 years younger, she was in the 2nd grade. I'm in the 4th grade. And I'd walk to school with them, carrying that bologna sandwich, walking around with those holes in my shoes, holes in my clothes. And I complained every step of the way. They never complained. You see, I'm a middle child. And you know middle children are psychologically screwed up anyway, right? And I'm walking around with those holes in my clothes, holes in my shoes. It was the hardest thing I ever done in my life. I hated walking around like that. My mom should have broke up Prozac and put it in my bologna sandwich when she made it. Walking around like that left me with low self-esteem. And that reflected in all my report cards. All of my report cards were filled with C's, D's, and F's, more D's and F's than anything else. I can't remember making an A in elementary school. When I finished 6th grade, I ran all the way home. I burst into the kitchen, and my mom was in there cooking. And I said, "Mama, I ain't never, ever going back to school. I hate school. She turned around. She put her hands on her hips. She looked at me. She shook her head. She went back to cooking. And I said, that was easy. I never have to go to school again. You know, you're 12 years old, you're dumb, right? Stupid. But she's looking at me thinking, that's my middle child. I don't have time for this right now, right? I didn't know how adamant my mom was about me getting an education until the summer ended, and it's time to go back to school. The house is buzzing. That little 3-room house is buzzing. 7 kids are getting ready to go to school. Somebody missed that. Yours truly is still in the bed. I ain't going. I pulled the covers up, right? That was until my mom walked in. She put her hands on her hips again, and she hyphenated my name. She broke it down. She said, Nathaniel. And that was a 5-alarm warning in our house. Everyone knew there was a 5-alarm warning in that house because they all stopped and they got quiet. They got church quiet, right? Because they knew. My mom, she was the Muhammad Ali of that house. She was undisputed, undefeated heavyweight champion of that house, and she had never lost a bout with any of her 8 children. And I knew if I didn't line up, put my clothes on, and head out that door with the rest of my brothers and sisters, my mom was getting ready to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee on my behind. So I'm up. I'm gone. And they were standing, and my brothers and sisters, they were all fighting to stand in the door to see what was going to happen, right? And they weren't concerned about me. You know, they sadistic, right? They crazy. What they wanted to do was see the beat down so they could laugh about it. I'm off to school. Nothing has changed. I hate it. It's all I imagine. I hated it. Why? Because I'm still walking around with those holes in my shoes. I'm still carrying that bologna sandwich. I hate it. Until I walked in my 5th period science class. Mr. Hake's 5th period science class. Mr. Hake has his head down. He had to see me. I'm standing in the door, deciding what seat I'm going to get in the corner in the back. Why? Because that's my comfort zone. Why is that my comfort zone? See, when you grow up in poverty, you have holes in your shoes and you have holes in your clothes. You want to keep everything in front of you. You don't want anything behind you because that's trouble, right? So I decided I'm going to get that seat because it's closer to the exit. I stepped through the threshold of the door, and that's when Mr. Hake looked up. And he goes, oh, you must be Nathan. I've heard a lot of wonderful things about you. And it was like a knee-jerk reaction. It was like, me, there's got to be another Nathan back there. Because I hated school, and I was always in the principal's office. I was always getting beat down at home because I didn't want to go to school. Me? That didn't deter him one bit. He gets up, he comes over, he shakes my hand. He puts his arm around me, and he's talking to me. He's taking Nathan to school, and then he stops. He's got this big smile on his face, and he stops. He says, Nathan, we have a raised seated in this classroom, and this is your desk. And he pointed to a desk on the front row directly in front of his desk. And, oh, fear just rained down all over my body. This was the worst possible thing that could happen to me. I'm not a nerd. I'm not going to raise my hand. Hey, teacher, teacher, teacher. I'm not doing that. I like the back. That's my comfort zone. Worst possible thing that could happen to me. But Mr. Hake was a master teacher. He was a master motivator. He was a master character developer. He could take a room full of 7th graders and make each and every one of us feel like we had a private tutor. That's how good he was. You ever had somebody in your life who make you feel like that? You ever had a teacher in the classroom that you felt was just teaching directly to you? That's how he made me feel. In a short period of time, he would alleviate all those fears. As a matter of fact, I felt special about myself when I left his class the first day. The last class of the day is 7th grade football. I'm lined up outside with all the other 7th graders, waiting for the coaches to come out to introduce themselves. I'm at the very end. I'm the smallest, or one of the smallest. Out walks this big giant of a man, Coach Mark Wallace. He's 6'4". He looks like a giant to me because he's going down the line, he's shaking hands. And he gets to me, and he said, "You must be Hearne." He said, "Hearne, I heard a lot of wonderful things about you." He said, "Hearne, I heard you were a good athlete." And he said, "Hearne, you're going to be on my team, and we're going to have a lot of fun winning football games." And he smiled at me, and my heart went, whoa. I went home the first day of school walking on a cloud. Why? Because 2 teachers had affirmed me in one day, and that had never happened to me before. I couldn't wait to get back to school the next day. As a matter of fact, I left early. My mom asked me, thank you. My mom asked my sisters and brothers, "Where is he at?" And they said, "He's already gone." She said, "That boy's lost his mind." She said, "On Monday, I'm threatening to beat him half to death if he don't go to school. And on Tuesday, he's going to school early." That boy has lost his mind. I get to school on Tuesday. I go out to football, and guess what? Coach Wallace, his words matches what he says, right? When you step in front of somebody, you're going to sell them a policy. You better what? Your words better match your actions. His words matched his action. I'm on his team. And in 2 weeks, he's getting us ready for that first game. I become his starting running back on offense, his starting cornerback on defense. He has me on all special teams. He never takes me off the field. How do it make you feel when someone do you like that? He's doing these transformational, life-impacting things every day with me. You know, that's that old cliche when you play football, sports, they say you'll run through a brick wall for him. I would have ran through 10 brick walls for him. I'll never forget the game. I played for him when I was 13 years old. I'm 70 years old. I'll never forget it. It was a breakout game. I scored 4 touchdowns, rushed for 280-something yards, intercepted the pass on defense. We won the game big. You know, as an athlete, and I know some of you have played this game like Robert, it's a feeling of invincibility. You become invincible. You feel invincible. You get in a zone. But that feeling of being invincible in a zone did not compare to what happened after the game. After the game, I'm standing out on the field with the rest of my teammates, and he walks through them. And he comes up to me, and he hugs me. And he looks down at me, and he said, "Hearne, that was just outstanding." And then he had an affirmation, a phrase that he used on me that day, and he would use that phrase as long as I've known him. He said, "But Hearne, I knew you would do this. I knew you would do this." He stepped back. His wife was with him. She's an English teacher at the school, and they're always together. They're a young couple. She comes up, she hugs me, she tells me I'm wonderful, she's beautiful. 7th grader with all those hormones raging in my body. It took about 2 weeks to wipe that silly grin off my face. That's on a Saturday. On Monday, I'm in Mr. Hake's 5th period science class, and it's report card day, right? He's walking around the room, and he's placing report cards face down on the student's desk. He walks by my desk, and he puts my report card face down. He continues on around the room passing out cards. I turn my report card over, and I have an A inside. An A. And it's just like that. I just wanted to jump up and just shout. I just wanted to tell him, "Hey, I made an A." But it didn't stop there. He comes back around. He steps in front of my desk and he says, "Nathan, stand up." He said, "Boys and girls, I need your attention." He said, "On Saturday, Nathan," and he told him all about what I'd done in the game. I never saw him there. But see, he was that kind of character developer. He did that for everyone in the room. He would find us doing things after school, sports things, or in the community, and then he would wait and brag on us. He did that for all of us. And when he finished telling them about what I'd done in the game, he says, Nathan is not only an outstanding football player, but he's an A student in this class, and for his outstanding efforts, I'm going to make him my lab assistant. Nathan. He said, Nathan, don't you move. Stay right there. And he goes to the back of the room. He goes to the lab area. He goes into the closet, and there's a white bundle in there, and it's folded, and he pulls it down. Now, I'm standing in front of my classmates with this deer in the headlight look in my eyes because I don't have a clue what a lab assistant is. I grew up in poverty. What is that? What is a lab assistant? Don't know. He comes back. He stops beside me. He unfolds that white bundle. And it turns out to be a brand spanking new white lab coat, similar to the one he wears. He puts that white lab coat on me in front of my classmates, and my world does this. It changed. It changed. It changed me. But I've got to paint a better picture for you, right? The magnitude of that moment. I'm still that same kid. I still got the holes in my shoes. I still have the holes in my clothes. I'm still carrying that bologna sandwich in that brown paper sack, but it's after lunch. I've got that greasy brown paper sack folded up and placed in my back pocket because my mother told me, you're the only one who doesn't come home with these sacks. We do not have the money to buy sacks for you every day. If you lose this sack, you will carry that bologna sandwich to school in your hand. And she was not joking. I'm still that kid. Oh, but now I've made an A in Mr. Hake's science class. It's just been announced that I'm going to be his lab assistant. And I'm standing in front of my classmates with a brand new white lab coat on with my name on the pocket. It didn't get any better than that for a kid who grew up in poverty with low self-esteem. That's what you do. That's how you make people feel. That's the relationship. That's what the good ones do. That's the legacy. You know, when I'd rush, I couldn't wait to get to class. I'd rush in there. I'd put that white lab coat on. It made me feel like Superman. And then walking around with that white lab coat on with my name on the pocket, it turned me into a chick magnet. The girls loved me. I kept my grades up all the way through junior high, right? Went to high school. Made the honor roll. Graduated from high school. Received an academic athletic scholarship to college. Went to college, graduated in 4 years, and I returned to West Texas. And I taught science, and I coached football for 35 years. All because of those two men who gave me something to believe in that was bigger than myself, who empowered me to do great things without them. 10 of those years that I coached football was at Permian High School in Odessa, Texas. And I know you probably don't know because it was back in the day. But Permian High School was the apex for football in Texas. During those years I was there, those 10 years, they were the best years in the history of that school. We won more football games than any other high school in the state of Texas from 1980 to 1989. They named us Team of the Decade. We won 6 state championships, and we were named national champions twice. A book, a movie, TV series came out of that. That last state championship that we won so far, 1991, after that, they asked me to be a principal at Permian High School. My second year as a principal at Permian High School, I was named Outstanding Principal of Region 18. Thank you. They sent me to Austin, Texas to receive the award from the governor. During my time in Austin, they wrote an article about me being named Outstanding Principal of Region 18. It's about this big. They put it on the back of the local newspaper between the want ads and the obituary section. You cannot make this up. You see it, right? After I returned, 2 weeks, my secretary, Mrs. Alice Mosley, she walks into my office and she announces, Mr. Hearne, you have a visitor. I didn't look up. I just said, if it's a student or a teacher, please, just send them in, Miss Mosley. And then after a few seconds, I feel this presence over me. And I look up, and it's Coach Wallace. But he's not the coach anymore. He is the superintendent of that school district that I graduated from. And the man who saved my life, who changed my life, who transformed me is standing in front of me, and I jump up and I stick my hand across the desk to shake his hand. He won't shake my hand. He won't take it. He walks around my desk and he hugged me. And he says, Hearne, I'll never forget it. He says, Hearne, I read about you in the paper. And I said, Coach, you had to play CSI to find that article. He just smiled, and then he said, Hearne, Jan and I, his wife, and Clyde, we've been following your career since you graduated from high school. He said, son, you've been doing some amazing things. And he said, I just wanted to come by and tell you how proud we are of you. How proud we are of you. I said, thanks, Coach. And then he paused, and he said, but Hearne, I knew you would do this. Looking in his eyes and hearing that familiar affirmation, it transported me all the way back to that 7th grade football player out there on that field that day. And I began to weep. I cried and I cried. It was the most embarrassing thing that a grown man can do in front of his old coach. I was so embarrassed. I couldn't stop crying. I had to sit down. When I sit down, he just sit down in the other chair and he just looked at me cry, smile. You know, when I do that, when you get here, you know, that old stuff, you know, oh, men don't cry. Biggest lie I've ever heard. The older I get, the more I cry. You know why I cry? Because I remember the journey, right? I remember the journey. I remember why I'm standing on this stage. It's because of good people like you who poured into my life over and over and over and over again. That's the legacy that you're leaving. It doesn't start when you die. You're doing it right now. It's the journey, right? He spent an hour and a half with me in the office that day. You know what he was doing? He was still showing me how to walk out his legacy, and he was still maintaining that relationship he built with that 13-year-old kid 30 years earlier. What you do matches what you say. When you sell that policy, do you forget about them? No, you don't forget about them. You stay in touch. You stay in touch. You build that relationship. You stay with them. You don't forget them. You call on them. That's the legacy that you leave. That's why they remember you, and that's why they keep buying from you. My wife and I, we have the privilege and the blessing of traveling all over these United States, doing speaking and personal development. We're both Ziegler coaches. And when I first started this, we first started this 10 years ago, when I was introduced, they would talk about Friday Night Lights, and it was pretty big back in that time, and people would want to know all about it. What was it like? All of these things. And so on the plane, my wife looked at me and she said, "Baby, you need to write a book. People want to know." I wrote that book. In February of 2014, it was released. My classmates at that small school that I graduated from in West Texas, they got wind of it, and they invited me back to a class reunion and a book signing. They put me in the foyer. They put my books beside me. They stuck a Sharpie in my hand, and they would come up. We would reminisce about old times. I would sign a book for them, give it to them. I'm signing a book for a classmate, and I see this figure out of the peripheral. And I sign the book, I give it to him, and I look, it's Coach Wallace. But he's not the coach anymore. He's not even the superintendent anymore. He doesn't even live in that community anymore. He lives on his ranch, which is 4.5 hours away from that very spot. But he's standing there. I jump up. He walks over, he picks up a book, he looks at the book, and he said, "Hearne, did you write this?" "Yes, sir, Coach, every single word. I want to earn his regard." And then he looks down the book, he looks up, he says, "Hearne, I knew you would do this." What am I doing? I'm crying, and here comes Callie with a box of Kleenexes and taking pictures, right? You know, my wife and I we love the movies. Anytime we go somewhere, we'll find a movie theater and we go. And when you go to as many movies as we do, inevitably you're going to run into those tearjerker scenes. Men are never ready. Women are always ready. Right now, I bet half of you got those little Kleenex boxes, little things in your purses. You carry them all the time, yeah? She's going to pull it out, right? And so you hit those tearjerker scenes, my wife, she'll dig in her purse, she'll pull it out, and she'll go, "Here, baby." I'm crying. She's not crying, I'm crying. The older I get, the more I cry. She's passing out Kleenex, taking pictures. He is 75 years old in that picture. 75 years old. What is he doing? He's still showing me how to walk it out. He's still showing me how to walk it out. You know, when you have someone like that in your life, that's how you'll be to your people. You know, you're so many people that start getting older and you want to see how they're doing. He's getting older, and I'm wondering, I said, man, I don't want to lose him without looking him in the eye, shaking his hand, telling him how much I love him, and thanks for saving my life. I want... So I look him up, and I drive that 4.5 hours, 5 hours to his ranch. I'm just going in to say, "Coach, I love you," shake his hand, and tell him thanks. I stayed. They wouldn't let me leave, he and his wife. 2.5 days. Hey, this is what he said to me. I said, "Coach, I don't have..." He said, "Oh, that's okay, we'll go to Walmart. We can get you some underwear and a shirt." When people love you and want to build relationships with you. He's 83 years old in that picture. I'm at his house, right? Later, he texts me this. What is he doing? What is he doing? He's still showing me how to walk out his legacy, and he's still maintaining that relationship that he built with this 13-year-old kid 56 years ago. That's what you do. That's who you are. That's your legacy. You know, I was in Toastmasters, and they kicked me out. Toastmasters has rules. Toastmasters said you should never read to your audience because that insults their intelligence. And I kept reading, so they kicked me out. I'm going to read some things to you for time. You know, I want to not take up a lot of time. So when I get through reading these things, y'all can kick me out. I just want to give you some examples of what it is when you live and leave an intentional positive legacy and you build and maintain intentional positive relationships. Do not know if you remember me, but I will never forget about you, Coach. You were my coach back in the early 90s. You've always been a big inspiration to me, and I will never forget you. He was a playing Jesse, Robert. He could flat out play the game, and he's coming back to me and saying what I did for him. That makes me cry. That's that adrenaline. There's nothing better than that. Hi, Coach. I'm sure you don't remember me, but I was in your biology class at Permian, I think in '91. You let me dissect the first pig in class. I just wanted to say you were one of my favorite teachers. You were an amazing teacher. You embodied respect, class, and compassion for all to the highest degree, a quality all strive for but rarely achieved, and you carried it in space. Although my time with you was brief, you made a lasting impression on me, and for that I'm grateful. Have a wonderful, blessed day, and may the good Lord keep you and bless you always, Susan. 90s. You see where she sent that? 2009. When you... When you give them something bigger than themselves to believe in, and you maintain that relationship with you, they will never forget you. All I was doing was trying to do the same thing that Mr. Hackett did for me. Every student that walked through my biology doors, I wanted to give them that white lab coat experience that Mr. Hake gave me. Every agent that you sit down with, you want to give them that first experience that Ron gave that first client that he talked to. That's the legacy, isn't it? I want you to know how very much I appreciate Mr. Nate Hearne. On Monday this week, I had a visit with Mr. Hearne regarding a problem. Not only did Mr. Hearne allow me as much time as I needed to wring my hands, he immediately found the best solution for my child and took care of it. I left Permian that afternoon feeling secure in the fact that I have a voice when I have a concern, and if possible, acted upon. The most important feeling I have is that my child is important to Mr. Hearne. This is not because he might know him, but that Mr. Hearne's first concern is the kids. I am so impressed and thankful. I am grateful that my child and all the junior class will have Mr. Hearne as their junior and senior principal to stand with them throughout the next 2 years. That's a parent. All I was doing was demonstrating, trying to emulate what Coach Wallace did for me that day he walked in my office as an administrator. That's the legacy. She sent that to everybody, the superintendent, the cabinet, everybody in Odessa, Texas. That's how they feel about you when you walk out that legacy. We started this, Muhammad Ali said, helping folks on earth is like paying rent on your room in heaven. Helping other folks, that's what you do, right? You help other folks, right? Your service. Helping folks here is like paying rent on your room in heaven. You know, we started this off with a question, and that question is, what's your legacy? And the best person to answer that question is you as the CEO or the president or the director or supervisor of the company, about how you keep your people highly motivated and happy through sharing your personal story, sharing the company mission statement, and valuing the diversity of the people you work with. You see, when you value the diversity of the people you work with and hire, they see meaning in what they do, and they feel valued for who they are. And that gives rise to the highest form of motivation known to humankind. And Peter Ludwig, in his book, The End of Procrastination, he names it. He calls it intrinsic journey-based motivation. It focuses on the action and not the why. It focuses on the journey and not the destination. Zig Ziglar said, when you start building and leaving an intentional positive legacy, and when you start building and maintaining intentional positive relationships, success always follows. It's not about money. It's not about material possessions. How do you want people to judge your legacy? Would you like to have them judge it by the amount of money you have in your bank account and have that amount engraved on your tombstone when you die? Hey, this is what's happening. Since this pandemic, you know what people are focusing on? That dash. That dash between that birth date and that death date. Why? Because you don't know when it's going to happen. Right? Your legacy. All I'm trying to say today is this. You must be intentional about the legacy you choose to leave. Why? Because it can save a life. It can transform a company. It can inspire a nation to change. That's how powerful your intentional legacy is. And living and leaving an intentional positive legacy and building and maintaining intentional positive relationships is simply a choice. God bless you.